Hiding my expensive shampoo and conditioner from my friend's guest wasn't a decision I took lightly, but as I stood in my small, dimly lit bathroom, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination swirling in my chest. I worked hard to earn the little luxuries in my life, especially my indulgent hair products that had become something of a personal ritual. To call them expensive seemed an understatement. They were a splurge, a treat for myself after months of saving and budgeting. My bathroom had always felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could retreat from the chaos of the outside world. I kept it meticulously organized, arranging everything on its shelves with care. But recently, a shadow had crossed the threshold of my sanctuary: Jess, my impulsive yet adventurous friend who had just moved into her new apartment. She invited me over often, and I loved spending time in her vibrant, chaotic space. However, Jess had this adorable but reckless knack for inviting people to stay over without asking, and her latest guest, Tara, seemed to embody all of Jess's wildest impulses. The first time Tara crashed at Jess's place, I was surprised at how quickly the two hit it off. Tara was a friend of a friend, someone I hadn't known well but instantly sensed was not particularly mindful of personal boundaries, especially when it came to possessions that didn't belong to her. When I learned she was staying for a few weeks, I started to feel uneasy, especially about my beloved shampoo and conditioner that I'd proudly displayed on my bathroom shelf. My routine had always included a lavish wash and condition cycle that lulled me into a sense of peace. I dreaded the idea of Tara, with her carelessness, pouring things out like they were a bottle of cheap soda. I couldn't help but imagine the horror of her washing her hair with my expensive products, treating them like mere souvenirs from the drugstore. Gradually, the creeping anxiety prompted me to act. One night, armed with the notion that this was, quite simply, my hair ritual we were talking about, I tucked both bottles away in the back corner of my closet, swaddled in soft towels, the equivalent of a security blanket. It felt a bit ridiculous, but as I tucked the last towel around them, a sense of relief washed over me like a soothing balm. I convinced myself this wasn't about being selfish, it was about protecting a cherished part of my routine. Yet, the first morning after doing so, a wave of guilt crashed over me. I knew Jess would find it odd if Tara expressed interest in trying to use my products and got no response. That guilt clung to me through breakfast, settling deep in my stomach as Jess happened to mention Tara's curiosity about my shower setup. A part of me wanted to say, "Oh, I hid my shampoo," but I never found the words. Instead, I casually brushed it off, hoping Jess would do the same. That evening, as I basked in my freshly cleaned hair, I overheard Jess telling Tara about my shampoo and conditioner. I felt my heart speed up. I knew she could have easily sought them out. The sheer panic coursing through me was further amplified when I overheard Tara excitedly asking if she could use them. Oh no, I thought, my heart sinking. My mind raced at the thought of my precious products being neglected, warped into a messy heap of potentially sticky hair. I knew I needed to keep them safe, to preserve my little corner of joy, but part of me felt like a villain for shutting my friend out from sharing in that joy. Weeks passed. I never let Tara close enough to my bathroom to even know what awaited her behind that perfectly organized door. Jess noticed my retreat into the bathroom, the strange avoidance of discussing products, and the unspoken tension grew. One afternoon, the gentle rain tapped on the window as we lounged on the couch, and Jess innocently broke the silence. "Why don't you like Tara?" After a long silence, I finally admitted the truth. I could feel my voice vibrating with anxiety as I explained everything: my fear, the guilty pleasure of my routine, and how I wanted to protect it from something outside of my control. Jess listened, her expression thoughtful. "It's okay to worry about your things, but you could have trusted me or Tara with it." I hadn't thought of it that way. It was a wake-up call, and even though I felt a weight lift off my chest, I still worried about how to turn around this small mountain of tension. That evening, I decided to take a step toward resolution. I apologized to Jess for hiding my shampoo and asked her to invite Tara to my place and share my routine with her. That night, I found myself pouring the leftover conditioner effortlessly into 2 fun little travel bottles, each adorned with tags from the local craft store. I felt a little silly but undeniably excited. As Jess and Tara cooed over the softness of my hair and products that now graced Tara's curls too, my heart swelled with an unexpected warmth. In that moment, the worry faded and revealed a simple truth: sometimes, sharing your treasures can create a bond far deeper than anything you could have imagined. I learned that night the importance of trust, and the joy that can spring from letting someone in. In time, Tara began to understand the reason behind my initial hesitation and even sought out her own version of expensive hair care, which made us laugh. It turned out the deeper conflict wasn't me being protective of my possessions but rather the challenge of allowing kindness and vulnerability to thrive in the face of anxiety. Update: a few months later, as we were all sprawled in Jess's living room post-movie, Tara casually remarked about how my products had been a game changer for her hair. A shared celebration emerged from that little mention, and in the light of her compliment, I realized my shampoo and conditioner had become a bridge rather than a barrier, strengthening the bond of friendship we had forged together. Just like that. The little pieces of my past no longer felt like possessions to guard, but instead reminders of how precious connections can be when fears are set aside. As the afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains of Jess's living room, casting gentle patterns on the floor, I found myself wrapped in a comfort I hadn't anticipated. The remnants of popcorn littered the coffee table, and the warm laughter of my friends mingled with the last fading echoes of the movie we had just finished watching. Jess, ever the host, had arranged an impressive spread of snacks, and the sweet familiarity in the air was both soothing and invigorating. Tara's passing comment about my luxurious shampoo and conditioner stirred something profound within me. I had always viewed my hair products as artifacts of exclusivity, treasures to be safeguarded like fragile relics from a past that felt so foreign now. I'd held so tightly to my fears about sharing them, fears that stemmed from memories of being laughed at for my tastes, or feeling out of place when unable to relate to the more frugal habits of others. Yet, sitting there, watching the joy spread across Tara's face as she spoke about how my products had transformed her hair, I realized that I had unwittingly constructed unnecessary walls around my treasures. Each game changer she recounted served as a testament to the bonds we were building, not just over hair care but over shared experiences and vulnerabilities. The tension in my chest, which once tightened at the thought of my belongings being under someone else's unappreciative gaze, began to dissolve like ice on a warm day. As the conversation flowed and we made plans for our next movie night, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. I was gradually learning that sharing a part of myself didn't deplete my identity. Instead, it enriched the connection we had cultivated. It inspired me to reflect on my resistance to letting others in. I had spent so long afraid that my belongings might define me in ways I didn't want, when in actuality, they had become a thread in the fabric of our friendship, just like the conversations we shared about dreams, ambitions, and insecurities. In the weeks that followed, I began not only to share my shampoo and conditioner with Tara but also to be more open about my other passions. One evening, while we were sitting on the porch, I showed her my collection of rare vinyl records, each with a story behind it. Tara listened intently, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, and soon we were immersed in discussions about music that led us to swap recommendations and have deep conversations about the feelings that different albums evoked in us. I began to see my unique preferences, whether in hair care or music, as invitations rather than barriers, inviting connections where I might have otherwise been guarded. As these connections blossomed, it became clear that my journey was no longer just about overcoming anxiety, it had transformed into a celebration of shared experiences. My friends often joked about being product prescribers, each confidently recommending their go-to beauty secrets or stylistic tips, and with every laugh and playful criticism, I felt more at home. We even joked about hosting a hair care night where we'd explore different styles while trading our favorite products. It inspired me to create a cozy, safe space where everyone could come together, no longer just around possessions but around an openness to learn and share. Looking back, I realized that my initial instinct to hide my shampoo and conditioner had stemmed from a fear of vulnerability, yet here I was, a few months later, celebrating connections that had formed not in spite of my unique identity but because of it. I had found a community that cherished each other's quirks, welcoming all that made us who we are. This realization settled in my heart like a warm glow, reminding me that sometimes, the things we fear most about sharing are the very things that unlock a deeper understanding within our relationships. So, when Tara reminisced about that fateful day in Jess's living room, it wasn't just a compliment, it was that shared bridge, a memory that would always remind me of the importance of opening my heart and allowing friendship to weave its way into the fabric of my life. And as we all gathered again for those cozy movie nights, my heart swelled with gratitude, for I had learned that the most precious possessions of all are the bonds we cultivate and cherish with those we hold dear. Our evenings together soon became a ritual, a sanctuary filled with laughter, old movies, and the steady ebb and flow of conversation that deepened our friendships. Tara, with her infectious enthusiasm, often took the lead, introducing us to the latest comedies or nostalgic flicks from the 90s. Each time we settled in on the couch, popcorn in hand, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since I first met them. The little insecurities I had once clung to, my fear of losing my prized hair products or the jealousy I felt when Tara first used them, had transformed into a comfort, a reminder that vulnerability could be the cornerstone of connection. There was something about seeing Tara effortlessly toss her hair over her shoulder, the glossy shine catching the light like a beautifully woven thread connecting us all. One evening, after binge-watching a series, the topic shifted to future plans, dreams and aspirations, the kind that often linger in the quiet corners of our minds. Tara spoke of her ambition to start a blog about beauty and self-care, a project that had been simmering just beneath the surface. As she spoke, I felt a bubbling sense of pride for her, tinged with a familiar pull of envy. It seemed so effortless for her, proclaiming her passion to the world, while I'd always been apprehensive about sharing my own nuances with others. It was then that I remembered the first day she had borrowed my shampoo, the piano line of laughter spilling from her lips when I first revealed my stash, the way she had touched each bottle with reverence, as if holding a gem. After a thoughtful pause, I decided to share, a leap of faith that surprised even me. I opened up about my trepidation towards vulnerability and how I had kept my products hidden, all of it transforming into an opportunity to encourage her ambition. Tara listened, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding, and as she did, Jess chimed in, sharing her own struggles with self-doubt. There was a flicker of realization in the air, an unspoken bond that connected the three of us through shared fears and expectations. For that brief moment, it felt as if I was peeling back the layers of a protective shell, bearing parts of myself that had long been closed off. As our conversation became more heartfelt, laughter mingling with a shared sense of vulnerability, I felt the weight of my earlier insecurities lift. It was a relief to acknowledge that we all had our ups and downs, insecurities and aspirations alike, and our friendship had become a safe space where we could lay it all bare. On that night, we forged a pact to not only support each other in achieving our dreams but also to celebrate our failures as part of this imperfect, beautiful tapestry we were weaving together. Weeks rolled into months, and soon Tara launched her blog, drawing from every laugh, every tear, and every awkward moment we had shared as friends. I watched her thrive, and with each updated post she published, I felt a part of that journey. She was my friend, and in her success, I celebrated my own triumph over my fears. That bond we formed wasn't just about my shampoo, it was a reflection of understanding, trust, and the beautiful messiness of life. In the quiet hours of the night, as I lay beneath the comforting weight of my blankets, I often found myself smiling, recalling the beginning of this incredible journey. The threads woven through friendship had become the very fabric of my existence, reminding me that every data point of insecurity dissolved in the glow of genuine connections. The profound lesson I learned, encased in the simplicity of shared moments over popcorn and laughter, was that authenticity in relationships can turn even our smallest concerns into a celebration of vulnerability, crafting a life that's rich not in possessions, but deep in love and understanding. And every time I reached for my bottles of shampoo and conditioner, I smiled, knowing they now served not just a personal ritual, but a reminder of the friendships I cherished and the bridges we had built together. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow across the table where I sat, a large glass of steaming coffee cradled between my hands. I wasn't what you'd call an extravagant person. In fact, I prided myself on my simplicity. But coffee, especially freshly brewed, was my guilty pleasure. It was the one indulgence I allowed myself in the otherwise orderly chaos of my life as a 31-year-old school teacher. My sister had dropped off my 8-year-old nephew, Jonah, for the weekend, as she often did when she needed a break, and while I adored the little guy, he could be a handful. Just that morning, as I indulged in my first sip of the rich, dark brew, Jonah peeked out from behind the living room couch, his eyes wide and filled with the innocent curiosity that made parenting both a joy and a challenge. I was aware of the rules around kids and caffeine. My sister often had gentle reminders about the dangers of caffeine for young ones like Jonah, yet I folded inwardly and thought about how I could have such a small moment to myself without feeling guilty. The coffee would surely not do him any harm if he just admired it from a distance, right? So there I sat, savoring that warmth, allowing myself to enjoy a moment of solitude amidst the weekend's planned chaos. As the rich scent twisted through the air, I heard Jonah's little feet skip closer, his eyes darting back and forth like he was deciding whether to venture deeper or stay put. "Aunt Mia, can I have some?" he asked, and I froze for a moment, the notion of sharing my coffee appalling yet amusing at the same time. Jonah, with his chocolate brown curls and cherubic face, gave me that hopeful gaze, and in that moment I felt the tug of decision weighing on my heart. On one hand, I wanted to tell him no, a responsible adult's instinct kicking in, fearing the rush that could send him bouncing off the walls and ruin our calm Saturday morning. But on the other hand, there was a certain sweetness and nostalgia tethered to my own childhood memories of adult behavior, a notion that adults had a magical drink that captivated and contented them. Just a little sip, I finally relented, pouring a single, cautious teaspoon into a small cup, the aroma rich and inviting. I watched as he took the cup in both hands, lifting it to his lips with a serious focus, and for a brief moment, I felt a sense of triumph, as if I had shared one of my cherished rituals with him, bonding beyond the usual aunt-nephew facade. But that triumph was overshadowed by a growing weight of doubt when Jonah made a grimace that could only be described as a mixture of confusion and alarm, his little face scrunching up as he choked on the unexpected bitterness. "Ew. That's gross," he exclaimed, immediately setting the cup down, and in that moment, I felt my heart sink. Embarrassment washed over me like a wave. Had I really just given my nephew coffee? What was I thinking? Guilt settled uncomfortably in my stomach, reminding me of the rules I had so carelessly brushed aside. Jonah's response echoed in my mind. The fun I thought we might have shared from the experience felt distant now, clouded by the undeniable responsibility that lay heavy upon me as an adult figure in his life. The thought that I might have clouded our weekend with repercussions played out in my head like an unexpected horror show, and my heartbeat quickened with the fear of needing to explain myself to my sister. Later that day, my worst fear was realized when Jonah casually mentioned our little coffee episode during dinner, and his mother's eyes flickered with a mix of surprise and concern. "Mia," she said, her voice carefully measured, "I thought we talked about this. What were you thinking?" It wasn't an accusatory tone, merely an acknowledgement of the boundaries we navigate to keep our kids safe, but it cut deeper than I expected. I introduced tension into a lively Saturday dinner, and guilt washed over me anew as I tried to defend my actions, explaining my reasoning, but it felt flimsy even to my own ears. The words stumbled out. Maybe I had been foolish, seeking to connect through something that, in hindsight, was never meant to be shared. I could feel my heart racing, the apprehensive air pooling around us in palpable silence as my sister measured her next words carefully. After the initial tension faded, the conversation softened, allowing me a moment of reflection. They say being a parent is full of mistakes, and I had just stumbled into mine, with a mere glass of coffee. Nevertheless, I was determined to learn from it, to be mindful of the small pleasures that should remain mine alone, while still being the aunt who brought joy. I wrapped up the evening by redirecting our focus to the cookies we made together earlier that day. It felt good to laugh and create new memories. As I put Jonah to bed that night, he clung to the memories of cookies and stories, the earlier incident slipping into the backdrop of laughter as if it had never happened. I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and whispered an unspoken promise to myself that I would let the adults indulge, share the experience, yet hold to the boundaries that protected the innocence still residing in young hearts. A few weeks passed before I felt the urge to update on the timing of our coffee incident, one night after a large family gathering. Jonah, unwittingly overheard commenting to his mother about wanting to try coffee again when he grew up, brought an unexpected smile, tinged with regret, to my face. My sister looked at me with that knowing smile, a mix of affection and teasing that told me she understood I was learning from this, an aunt who cared deeply, yet found herself navigating the sometimes tumultuous waters of an alternative relationship. "Maybe just wait a few years, huh?" She would chuckle softly, and I could only nod, feeling a warm embrace of acceptance around the gentle, growing bond with my nephew that promised many more adventures to come, coffee aside. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with strokes of orange and purple, I leaned back against the worn-out couch of my sister's living room, enveloped in a comfort that was both nostalgic and suffocating. The laughter of my nephew, Lucas, still echoed in my ears, a melody of youthful innocence and wonder that reminded me of everything I cherished in our relationship. It was the first time I had seriously considered how my choices, even the seemingly trivial ones, might affect him. I thought of our earlier conversation, where his curious eyes had sparked with excitement at the thought of coffee, something I had once so eagerly introduced into my own life, imagining the day I could share it with him. A part of me felt a pang of guilt for sipping my steaming mug so casually, hardly second-guessing those age-old debates surrounding caffeine and childhood. My sister had always been the more conscientious parent, the one who would often reel me in for my more impulsive decisions. In many ways, I admired her for it. Even now, as she washed the dishes in her own rhythmic, calming manner, I could see her glancing back over her shoulder, her smile a testament to our unfinished conversations, as if gauging my mind state. "Want to help me with this?" she called out, gesturing to a pile of colorful plates glinting in the fading light, her voice a soft invitation. I stood, shaking off the remnants of self-reflection, and joined her in the kitchen. As we washed and dried, our chatter turned playful, bouncing between memories of our childhood and plans for the future. The scent of the lingering dinner wafted around us like a warm blanket, the comforting aroma of roasted chicken mingling with ginger and garlic, creating a homey atmosphere that only deepened our familial bond. It was in these moments that I truly felt the depth of my connection to her and to Lucas, with every shared laugh acting as a thread weaving us tighter together. Yet, the earlier discussion about coffee pooled in my thoughts, not dissipating but rather growing denser, revealing uncharted waters in my role as an aunt. Should I really wait for him? Should I not? I realized that it wasn't about the coffee at all, it was about modeling a relationship with choices, understanding, and ultimately, moderation. Would that cup of coffee, once presented to him, symbolize a moment of bonding, or could it come to represent something he may someday even struggle with in his own life? And what if my apparent acceptance of it pushed him to seek out experiences too soon? It was a delicate dance of influence, one that weighed heavily on my heart. By the time we finished cleaning up, the stars began to peek through the darkened sky, twinkling like distant thoughts of dreams yet to come. I turned to Lucas, who had taken up residence in the corner of the living room with a pile of Lego bricks that sparkled in every color imaginable, erupting into a miniature metropolis. His concentration was captivating, his little tongue peeked out in concentrated determination as he clicked two pieces together, forming something only he could see. I crouched beside him, resting my elbows on my knees, torn between wanting to acknowledge our previous conversation and wanting to admire his creations without intruding. "What are you building?" I asked, genuinely intrigued. He paused for a moment, glanced at me, and in his innocent wisdom replied, "A cafe. You can have coffee there, and I'll have lemonade. Maybe after we finish building, we can have a pretend coffee party." That beautiful blend of imagination and earnestness brightened my heart. His words shifted my perspective entirely. Instead of thinking about coffee as a potential source of conflict, I started to envision it like this magical centerpiece of an adventure, one where we could share not just drinks but laughter, stories, and dreams. There in that moment, understanding blossomed. Perhaps it wasn't about the right age for coffee but rather about creating safe spaces for experimentation and growth, together. I leaned in closer. "That sounds perfect, buddy. But let's keep the lemonade flowing first, maybe?" We both laughed, and I could feel the weight of uncertainty slipping from my shoulders like a fading shadow. Hours passed in what felt like mere moments, the cafe of imagination taking shape before us. Our pretended coffee party blossomed into a storyline unexpected yet wholly refreshing. In that playful creation, I found myself as not just an aunt but also a partner in adventure, letting go of predetermined answers and embracing openness instead. It was less about right or wrong, AITA labels, and more about connection, heart, and all the memories waiting to be made. As I tucked Lucas into bed later that night, he yawned widely, sleep creeping onto him like a gentle tide. I kissed his forehead and whispered goodnight, my heart swelling with the promise of more moments to come, both real and imagined. The warm embrace of family and joyous curiosity would forever be the backdrop to our memories, and while my inclination towards creating boundaries would always linger, I now saw clearly that love, laughter, and a big glass of playful imagination was more than enough to guide us forward. And as I slipped into my own bed that night, cozy under the covers, I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps in our imperfect, vibrant tapestry of life, there was no real asshole, only uncontrollable love, transformative moments, and the chance to share in the whimsical journey of growing up together, sip by sip, lesson by lesson. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, the sun streaming through my bedroom window determined to brush off the remnants of last night's contemplative mood. I lay there for a moment, blinking at the sunlight as it nudged me awake, and replayed the previous day's events in my mind. My thoughts flickered back to my nephew, a small whirlwind of laughter, mischief, and boundless energy that he was, and the peculiar mix of apologies and conversations that flowed between my sister and me. It was as if a gentle wave had washed over our relationship, yet another layer added to an already profound bond that had been built over years of shared stories, both poignant and silly. As I pulled on my favorite oversized sweater and ventured into the kitchen, the rich aroma of brewing coffee wafted through the air, a familiar embrace that welcomed me to the morning. I paused, contemplating how a simple morning ritual could transform into something deeper. The bubbling of the coffee machine harmonized with the soft chirping of birds just outside my window, working together to set the stage for a new day of connection. Just then, the kitchen door swung open, and in came my nephew, his hair tousled with sleep and eyes wide with excitement. "Auntie," he shouted, a huge grin stretching across his face, and I felt my heart swell. Here he was, full of potential, and I wanted nothing more than for him to know the warmth of genuine connection, even if it came with a side of caffeinated misunderstandings. We concocted a plan, a departure from our usual weekend routine. Today would be a day of adventure, designed around the imaginative whims of a 5-year-old. We decided to transform our small backyard into a coffee shop, complete with a makeshift menu scrawled on a piece of cardboard and a tea set I unearthed from the cupboard, which would serve our coffee, hot chocolate topped with whipped cream, of course. Tossing on our shoes and bursting outside, my nephew and I giggled as we pretended to grind coffee beans with theatrics, his little hands mimicking the motion dramatically as if he were an acclaimed barista. As the morning ebbed away, we turned our little shop into a flurry of activity, inviting my sister to join in on our fun. She chuckled along with us as we filled cups with chocolate, adorned with colorful sprinkles and chaotically topped with whipped cream. Each sip was a burst of joy, a testimony to the little moments that mattered so much. We served imaginary customers, took requests, and my nephew delighted in pretending to be the chief server, wearing a makeshift apron that hung like a shroud around his narrow shoulders. But amidst the laughter, I couldn't shake the thought of how easily miscommunication could stir waves of unease and overreaction, a whisper of anxiety tugging at the corners of my contentment. I watched him, absorbed in the make-believe world we created, and I realized that every moment we spent together was a lesson in understanding, his innocence reminding me of the joy and simplicity, yet also teaching me about nuances, about flaws and acceptance. If we could turn something as trivial as a glass of coffee into a heartfelt conversation about boundaries and love, then surely, we could navigate the complexities of our relationship with grace. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over our backyard makeshift cafe, I felt a wave of conclusion wash over me. Our day had unfolded organically, each moment rich with laughter and genuine connection, reinforcing the idea that there are no real assholes in this journey, just individuals growing, learning, and sometimes misstepping. I looked at my sister, who caught my eye from where she sat, a knowing smile on her lips. We shared a silent agreement: we were navigating this beautifully complicated realm of family, side by side. That evening, as the stars began to twinkle overhead, I tucked my nephew in, sharing stories from my own childhood, the ones that inspired the creation of our backyard cafe. He listened intently, his eyelids drooping as a peaceful smile graced his lips. As I kissed him goodnight, a rush of hope filled my chest. This was only the beginning. We would continue to create, to explore, and to understand one another, sip by sip, lesson by lesson, growing together in the radiant tapestry of life. And who knew? Perhaps I'd bring a larger, warmer kind of coffee into our cafe the next time, but for now, this evening was perfect just as it was. I still remember the first time I walked into that small examination room, framed by pale yellow walls that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it, with a flickering fluorescent bulb that hummed overhead like a persistent ghost trying to breach the silence. As a fresh-faced medical intern, I was filled with an overwhelming mix of eagerness and anxiety, flipping through pages of notes on patient rapport and ethics while trying to remember the dozens of diseases I'd only ever read about in textbooks. I wanted to make a difference, to heal and to help. But it was during that first week that life decided to hit me with a hard truth that I could never have prepared for. I was assigned to a pediatric ward, which was both a blessing and a challenge, teeming with stories that tugged at the heartstrings in ways I was still figuring out how to process. My very first patient was a young girl named Lily, with golden curls that framed her cherubic face and a smile bright enough to fill the room. Once a ray of sunshine, she had started to dim, battling a rare form of leukemia that had robbed her of her joy and her childhood. At just 8 years old, she was grappling with the reality of her treatment, the endless needles piercing her small arms, and the isolation that accompanied her illness. I was assigned to her care, and it felt like being handed a delicate glass sculpture. I wanted to protect her, to help in whatever way I could. Yet, the weight of her vulnerability crushed me in an unexpected way. Day by day, I observed how the sterile scent of antiseptics hung in the air, intertwined with cheerful decorations on the walls that seemed to mock the gravity of her situation. Our conversations flowed like a gentle stream, with her effortlessly transitioning from her favorite animated shows to the games she missed playing outdoors. I laughed along with her, tried to adopt her innocence and optimism, but inside, I felt an ache that gnawed at my insides. My time with her was fleeting in the grand scheme of her treatment, external to the ebb and flow of what I was learning. I had never encountered this kind of emotional terrain before, How could I balance my professional responsibilities while also forming a bond that felt so achingly human? I went home each evening wondering if I should be feeling more detached or allowing myself to care deeply for this tiny soul who was learning at such a tender age that life could sometimes be cruel. Then came the day when the doctor pulled me aside, his brow furrowed under the weight of difficult words. The treatment wasn't working. Lily had developed resistance to the chemotherapy drugs they had been using. He spoke in hushed tones, outlining potential alternatives, but each option felt like more of a gamble than a safety net. I left the huddle feeling hollow, knowing I had to face her with this unwelcome truth. That evening, as I prepared myself to sit by her side, I felt a tsunami of panic wash over me. How do you explain that the medicine meant to heal her was now failing? How can one express that kind of heartbreak without shattering the fragile spirit of a child? Sitting down next to her bed, I tried to keep my tone light, but she could see through my facade. "You look sad," she said, her innocent blue eyes searching mine for answers. I opened my mouth to reassure her, but nothing came out. Her tiny hand reached out and clasped mine, an innocent gesture that ignited something powerful within me. I finally spoke, telling her that we were in this together, that she was brave and strong, but inside, my heart felt like it was breaking. I thought about the guidelines and the ethics, the tightrope that healthcare professionals are expected to walk between their emotions and responsibilities, how HIPAA measures guard our patients' privacy but often leave us feeling emotionally isolated from one another. The words echoed in my head, they prescribe distance, but how could I maintain that with a girl who truly was just a child? In the following days, as we both faced the harsh realities ahead, she began to ask me about my life, who I was, where I came from, things I never thought I would share with a patient. I found myself divulging snippets of my own story, whether about my childhood dreams or my recent hobbies, and she would eagerly respond with tales of her favorite books. In those moments, laughter would bubble between us, momentarily dispelling the heavy veil of grief that lingered over her room. Each visit became a bittersweet fusion of joy and despair, an exchange of life even on days that felt suffocatingly bleak. Yet, the inevitable happened 4 weeks later. Lily's condition suddenly worsened, and I knew deep down that we were nearing an end. I sat beside her in silence, holding her small hand, realizing that the barrier between patient and caregiver had irrevocably torn. It was during those last moments, when she looked up at me with those trusting eyes, that everything stopped. We shared a laugh, a flicker of joy amidst the heavy heartache, and she whispered, "I'll always be your friend." Just moments later, her breaths grew shallow, the beep of machines fading into a haunting lullaby. I could only grasp her hand tighter, the tears now streaming down my face as she exhaled for the last time, her little body finally releasing the burden it had carried. It broke me. I lost a piece of myself that day. I left the hospital that evening feeling heavier than I had ever felt before. I hadn't held myself together, nor did I understand how one could maintain professionalism when one's heart was so deeply entwined in the difficult fabric of a life lost too soon. And as I sat in the back seat of the cab, staring blankly at the passing street lights, the weight of the world pressed down on me, an acute reminder of what it meant to be fragile. I realized that no amount of HIPAA training or medical knowledge could prepare me for the emotional tapestry woven between healing and loss, the deep, sometimes cruel bond we form with those we are meant to care for in this life. Now, months later, I reflect on that time with Lily with a bittersweet sense of acceptance. The journey of healing doesn't always mean mending. Sometimes, it's about learning to carry the pieces of what was lost with compassion and grace. I still work in healthcare, still hold the hands of children, and every day, I remind myself of that laughter, the light she brought into even the darkest of rooms, and I know that for every heart I may break, I also have the opportunity to build bridges of connection, however fleeting they may be. Because at the end of the day, it is the love we share, even in sadness, that truly helps us heal. As I sit here, reflecting on those poignant memories, I'm reminded of a patient who brought me an unexpected lesson in love and loss. It began quietly, like a whisper of fate, when I received the case of a young boy named Ethan, a bright-eyed 7-year-old with a spirit that shone even in the confines of the hospital. The first time I entered his room, his laughter rang out like sweet music, flowing against the stark white walls adorned with cheerful drawings that filled the space with a remarkable warmth. The joy he radiated was infectious, serving as a stark contrast to the sterile environment that usually wrapped us all in its cold embrace. I was a few years into my career, passionate yet inexperienced, still wrestling with the emotional toll of caring for those in need while protecting my heart from the inevitable heartaches that healthcare often brings. Ethan had been diagnosed with leukemia, a battle he faced with the bravery of a lion, cracking jokes about his hair loss and insisting that the doctors were merely making him a little superhero ready to save the world. His resilience and ability to find light in darkness reminded me of that precious child I lost, and each bittersweet laugh of Ethan's struck a chord in me. It was a delicate dance, almost like walking the tightrope of hope and fear, both wondering if I could risk getting attached while knowing he was in a precarious place. With each passing day, I would sit by his bedside, sharing stories, jokes, and even the occasional tears. It felt like a privilege to be a part of his journey, to witness a child's will to fight, to dream, even when pain threatened to pull him under. Yet, there came a day when I walked into his room, expecting the usual banter. Instead, I was met with an unsettling silence, the kind that wraps around you like fog, heavy and suffocating. On that day, Ethan's eyes were closed, a thin sheet pulled tightly over his frail body, his mom sitting beside him, cradling his tiny hand in hers. I felt that familiar pang in my chest, the fear of the inevitable, but I steadied myself, reminding myself to stay present, to honor every moment. I whispered sweet greetings, sharing tales of the outside world, of bright sunny days just waiting for him to conquer. But it was Ethan's reply that shattered me. As he opened his eyes, that spark, a fire I thought would never dim, flickered weakly. He looked toward me, and with a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Can we still go on our adventures in my dreams? I want you to come with me." It felt like a knife twisting in my gut, ruthlessly. How could I tell a boy who had fought so valiantly that sometimes dreams are where we go to escape our realities? Instead, I smiled, and with a gentle nod, I promised him we would embark on our greatest quest yet. That night, as I lay in my own bed, wrestling with sleepless thoughts, I found myself drifting into a world of dreams. In my mind's eye, I could see Ethan and me, soaring above mountains, diving into oceans filled with sparkling fish, laughing as we sprinted through fields of swaying flowers. It was beautiful and vivid, a tapestry woven from all the joy he had shared. The following days felt like a montage, memories played in fast forward, until it was time for Ethan to say goodbye. To see his heartache mirrored in the faces of his family was solace and sorrow entwined, a bittersweet symphony I was all too familiar with. I held his hand as he took his last breaths, wishing I could take away every ounce of pain with my bare hands, pleading silently for a miracle. And when he finally drifted, his peaceful face etched in my memory, I realized this was a part of my journey, a part that I had to carry with compassion and grace. The hardest moments in our lives often shape our paths into something beautiful, something meaningful, no matter how tragic. Looking back on that chapter, I understand now that pain exists alongside joy, and healing does not equate to forgetting. I learned to wear my scars as badges that remind me of the love shared, even in fleeting moments, and how those moments can bridge what feels like an insurmountable divide. Nowadays, I pour all that I've learned into every child I encounter, sharing laughter, kindness, and a gentle presence to remind them that it's okay to be vulnerable, to embrace emotions, even the hardest ones. Because, in the end, it's not about the hearts we break, it's about the love we've given and the connections we've had, even when they remind us of what we've lost. My journey continues, and while the weight of grief never truly disappears, it has shaped me, making me more compassionate and empathetic. Life, an unpredictable and beautiful mess, brings us together, even as it tears us apart. And with every child's laughter I hear, I remember that the journey of healing is about cherishing those memories, carrying the pieces forward, and giving love as fiercely as we feel loss. Every day, I hold on to the hope that in the end, it is this love that helps us heal. Update: a few weeks after Ethan's passing, as I sat in the break room with my colleagues, a familiar face walked in. It was Ethan's mother, a visit I had not anticipated. She sparked a conversation that felt like a warm embrace, recounting stories of Ethan's joy, his love for life, and how he often spoke of our adventures and dreams. She reached out, holding my hand, tears glistening in her eyes, and said, "Thank you for seeing him, for sharing his laughter and reminding us all of the beauty in even the hardest days." In that moment, I understood, we were continuing the journey together, carrying pieces of love that transcended loss, forming a bond that would forever connect us. As we sat together in that small, dimly lit room, I could feel the weight of her gratitude pressing down on me, heavy yet sweet, like the promise of rain after a long drought. Ethan's mother, with her fragile smile, drew me back into the memories of all the times we shared with her son, his insatiable giggles echoing in the sterile air of the clinic, his mischievous antics that wove laughter into the fabric of our often somber surroundings. Each story she shared wrapped around me like a soft blanket, warming me against the chill of grief that I sometimes felt creeping at the edges of my heart. I realized then that healing isn't something we do alone, it's a community effort built on shared love and poignant moments. We spoke for hours, the outside world fading into the background as we became a safe haven for each other. She recounted the day Ethan saw the ocean for the first time, how wide his eyes grew, and how he squealed with delight as the waves danced around his tiny feet. With each story, I could see the flicker of life return to her eyes, a reminder that even in our most profound sorrow, the essence of our loved ones remains forever illuminated in the joy they imparted. In that shared vulnerability, we formed an unspoken pact, a promise to honor Ethan not just in our memory but by living fully, by embracing the joy and laughter that he once brought into our lives. As our hands remained clasped, I could feel the pulse of our connection, a lifeline forged through loss and laughter, through heartbreak and hope. As the shadows lengthened in the room and the soft glow of evening crept through the window, I sensed that this was more than just a visit, it was a turning point. We could grow together in our grief, transforming it into something beautiful and nurturing rather than allowing it to cut us off from joy. I began to contemplate ways I could honor Ethan's legacy, perhaps by organizing a small gathering for families within the hospital, creating an evening of joy where laughter could fill the air the way he once had, a butterfly flitting from one bloom to another, leaving behind traces of wonder. Leaving that day, I felt lighter, as if I had shed a layer of sorrow and found room for new beginnings. I held on to our radiant conversation, replaying her words in my mind. Even in sadness, we could stir the depths of joy. Love was not merely a memory, it was a force vibrant and alive. Days turned into weeks, and with each new sunrise, I found renewed inspiration. Within myself and my work, I pored over every detail of the event I was planning, wanting it to reflect Ethan's essence, a blend of creativity, imagination, and the exuberant spirit he had embodied. Finally, the night arrived, and the community gathered under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, laughter melding with the soft sounds of night. I stood at the front, heart racing as familiar faces mingled, their smiles interspersed with bittersweet reminders of what we had lost. We filled the space with colors, balloons, painted rocks, and banners that announced the joy of living and loving deeply, something that Ethan had taught us with every smile he shared. I watched as families interacted, each tender moment a testament to connections being forged anew, and it felt as if Ethan was right there with us, his laughter curling around us like a tender embrace. That evening was transformative. It not only stood as a monument to Ethan's joy but also as an invocation of our own healing paths. As I looked around at the smiling faces, I realized how far we had all come, united through both our grief and joy. I could hear echoes of laughter that were reminiscent of the sweet sounds he once made, and it filled my heart to know we were all learning to carry those pieces together, to find joy even amidst shadows. Reflecting back, I understood that every life touched holds the potential to spark connections that ripple far beyond our immediate perceptions of loss. The memory of Ethan no longer felt like a fragile remnant of pain. Instead, it had metamorphosed into a vibrant reminder of the resistance of joy. The journey of healing doesn't always mean mending, but it most certainly means learning to carry the pieces of what was lost with compassion and grace, and for that, I will forever be grateful. Update: a few months later, I received a message from Ethan's mother. She told me that her family started a tradition of celebrating Ethan's favorite things every year, flying kites in the park on his birthday, with laughter resonating through the breeze, reminding them to cherish every fleeting moment of joy life offers. She invited me to join, and I could hardly hold back the tears that welled in my eyes. I realized then that love is never truly lost, it finds new ways to wrap around us, creating connections that bring light even in the darkest of places. It's funny how a single moment can change everything, especially when you've poured your heart and soul into something that ultimately feels like a grand betrayal. I've been a dedicated fan of the show Through the Veil since its first season, drawn in by the intricate world building and the intricate relationships between characters. Each week, I'd gather with my small circle of friends, popcorn in hand, eagerly speculating about plot twists and character arcs. The show was more than just a pastime for us, it was a tapestry where our own experiences wove into the complex narratives playing out on our screens. But then came the final season, a season that was supposed to tie up years of storytelling in a satisfying bow. Instead, it felt like the showrunners had taken a megaphone to our cherished theories and shouted, "We don't care." I still remember the day the finale aired, a mix of excitement and dread swelling in my chest. As the hours approached, I could feel the electricity running through our group chat, with everyone sharing their thoughts, their hopes for the characters they had come to love as much as old friends. However, as the credits rolled on what was supposed to be our grand finale, I sat in stunned silence, my friends too, eyes wide. The plot had twisted in the most bewilderingly unsatisfactory manner, characters acted entirely out of character, beloved story arcs were abandoned, and the core relationships that had developed over several seasons were discarded like yesterday's news. It felt personal, like the creators had flipped the bird to all the fans who had invested emotionally and financially in the series. I spent that entire night tossing and turning in bed, the disappointment gnawing at me. Everyone else seemed to shrug it off, chalking it up to artistic freedom, but I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal. I finally decided to write an impassioned letter to the network, pouring my heart out about the discontent amplifying among the fanbase, wondering if they understood the consequences of their choices. Deep down, I knew it was just a show, but as I watched my friends spark up the next day about a different series, a hollow feeling settled in. I had hoped that my voice could spark some change, or at least get a response, but instead, I got silence, and I felt simultaneously mature and ridiculous for having staked a part of my identity on a fictional narrative. The punch to the gut feeling persisted for weeks. One evening, I found myself at a local cafe tucked away from the world, nursing a cup of herbal tea, when I overheard two baristas discussing their own feelings about the episode. They were joking about how they had been let down, but their banter soon spiraled into what those characters could have done differently. I felt an unfamiliar camaraderie. Leaning over, I pitched in with my own thoughts, and soon the conversation grew like wildfire, echoing our group's frustration but freeing me from my solitude. People I had never met were validating my feelings, and it struck me that perhaps I wasn't alone in my disillusionment with the show. I posted on a fan forum, seeking a space to air my grief, and found a chorus of voices just as disappointed. We shared theories that could have salvaged it all, and gradually, the weight of disappointment began to lift as we created our own alternate endings. It became therapeutic. Instead of focusing on the betrayal, we forged new paths for the characters and laughed together about the absurdity of it all. Each day brought fresh creativity, a collection of plot lines that would ironically remind us why we loved the show in the first place. In the end, though through the veil stumbled, a community emerged, stronger than any one individual, allowing us all to heal and find joy elsewhere. Reflecting on that time, I realized that sometimes the biggest middle finger to fans is just an opportunity, a prompt to explore why those stories mattered so much and to create new worlds together in their absence. Update: a few months later, I was authentically surprised when the showrunners announced they'd be revisiting the series with a special episode based on fan submissions. My heart raced, the mixture of hope and skepticism washing over me, but this time, I approached it differently. Whatever dark corner the show might lead me down, I could, at least, revel in my creative escape. As I settled into my dimly lit living room, clutching a steaming mug of chamomile tea, I could feel a blend of excitement and trepidation coursing through me. After the initial uproar and disappointment regarding the show's abrupt end, the announcement of a special episode rekindled a flicker of the passion I once felt for the characters I had followed through thick and thin. The past months had seen me diving headfirst into fan fiction, sketching scenes, and reconstructing plots that breathed new life into the narrative universe. Each late-night writing session became a refuge, a place where my frustrations transformed into vibrant tales colored with hope and nostalgia. However, the thought of the showrunners finally acknowledging their fanbase left me second-guessing my feelings. Would they genuinely listen to the voices of those who felt overlooked, or would this be another misstep, a tempting distraction that carried the same bitter aftertaste? The day arrived when we were told to submit our ideas, and the excitement spiraled into a backdrop of anxiety. I poured out my heart into a story that melded my favorite plot lines, reuniting characters who, in my mind, deserved a second chance, a reunion that carried the weight of unfulfilled promises. I let minutia roll off my fingers, building landscapes of gripping emotion and unraveling paths that had left me bewildered. The submission deadline passed like a soothing lullaby, and as I waited, I absorbed every drop of hope and doubt that floated into my thoughts. Days blended together, every ping of my phone sent my heart racing, yet returned only updates from friends speculating about the direction of the episode. Months flew by, and at moments I found myself buried under blankets and memories, ruminating about how I might feel when the episode finally aired. Would my favorite characters retain their essence, or would they fall victim to the very fickleness of storytelling I had tried to escape? The day of the premiere arrived like a potent storm, electric and surreal. I paused for a moment at the entrance of my living room, feeling the weight of nostalgia pressing against my chest. I switched on the television, and the familiar theme song echoed, a haunting reminder of what once captivated me. As I watched, the screen danced with images I had hoped for, my submissions were woven like threads into an intricate tapestry, and I felt immersed in the warmth of a familiar hug. In a peculiar yet satisfying turn, they blended fans' narratives seamlessly with their own, elevating the original story while paying homage to what sparked the love in the first place. Each twist, every dialogue sparked joy within me, igniting childhood dreams that lingered just beneath the surface. In true storytelling fashion, the creators took risks that felt authentic, where humor intertwined with heartbreaking moments. I could feel my heart racing in tandem with the characters' journeys. Their growth compelled me, igniting a fierce desire to cheer for them all over again. When the credits rolled, I finally exhaled, realizing I didn't just witness the episode, I had partaken in a celebration of community and creativity, a shared understanding that transcended mere entertainment. It was an articulation of everything I had yearned for, dreams woven collectively, which I thought might only ever exist in my notebooks. In the aftermath, I felt lighter as I tossed around ideas among my friends about potential next chapters for the characters. We laughed and critiqued, built and deconstructed narratives with warmth and intimacy, reclaiming the stories in our own ways. The series, which once felt like a betrayal, transformed into a collaborative playground, each suggestion revealing connections that knitted us closer together. As the days turned into weeks, I embraced those feelings of nostalgia without the suffocating grip of bitterness. Instead, I chose to revel in the journey. Looking back on everything, I realized how a supposed middle finger from creators spawned a rich exploration of passion, friendship, and creativity in reclaiming something profoundly shared. I realized, too, that sometimes the stories we hold dear can slip through our fingers, but are never truly lost. They morph into something new, vibrant, and alive, waiting for us to dive back in, ink new tales on blank pages, and create together, like we did. And with that realization, the darkness that once clouded my vision faded, offering a glimpse of endless possibility. Perhaps we are the architects of our stories, even if they're borrowed from the flicker of a screen or the ink of another's pen. With that realization simmering in my heart, I dove into the fan submission process with a mixture of enthusiasm and trepidation. The online forum had become a whirlwind of creativity, buzzing with ideas that both thrilled and terrified me. I spent hours reading how others interpreted the beloved characters, the settings, and the overarching themes that had captivated us, trying to find that spark within myself while grappling with the weight of expectations. Each submission echoed the pads of 1,000 eager feet, pushing against the gates of our collective nostalgia, and I found myself swept up in the wave of brainstorming sessions with my friends. We would gather in my small apartment, the dim light of string lights casting playful shadows on our faces as we combed through our notes and storyboards. We laughed, cried, and sometimes argued over character arcs and plot twists, but at the end of the night, it didn't matter who was right or wrong. We were creating together, breathing life into the void left behind by the showrunners, who had so abruptly disregarded our efforts. Eventually, I decided to submit a story that centered around a character who had long been a point of contention in the series. Once hailed as the most compelling part of the narrative, her disappearance in the latter seasons left many fans disheartened. It felt like a betrayal to cast aside such a rich and vibrant character, and so I chose to give her a tale of resilience and rediscovery, one where she stumbled upon a forgotten part of the world that held echoes of her past adventures. I could see her standing atop a cliff, reminiscent of the courage she had always shown, gazing out upon a vast horizon. Crafting her journey led me to confront my own feelings of abandonment, to explore what it meant to be loyal to something that seemed to have moved on without us. Weeks passed in a flurry of submissions from fans across the globe, a tapestry woven from the threads of different imaginations. I kept checking the updates on the show's fan page, each announcement stoking the fires of anticipation and anxiety. Finally, the moment arrived, the day they would unveil the chosen fan submissions that would shape the special episode. I sat in my living room, surrounded by crumpled pages and used coffee cups, feeling as if the walls were tightening around me as I waited for the announcement. When the clock struck noon, chills crept up my spine, the live stream began to fill my screen, the familiar logo flashing before my eyes like an old friend I had almost forgotten. As the showrunners shared their gratitude for the outpouring of creativity from fans, my heart pounded anxiously in my chest, each beat a reminder of how vulnerable this experience had made me. They began revealing the titles of the chosen stories, and each name echoed my growing hope, a series of breaths caught in my throat. My fingers tingled with disbelief when the host announced my submission, and for a moment, I felt suspended in time. The world outside faded away, the disgrace of the past replaced by a sense of belonging and validation. I had poured myself into those pages, and now, here I was, about to see my words transformed into a living, breathing segment of a universe that once seemed out of reach. The special episode was set to air a month later, but what lingered longer than the excitement was a profound shift within me. I had realized, through the act of creation, that storytelling possesses an innate power, one that connects people across their myriad experiences and fragmented relationships. I had become part of a community that thrived on shared passion, rebuilding something we loved from the ground up. The day the episode finally aired felt almost ceremonial. I gathered my friends once more, this time transforming my home into an impromptu viewing party, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of popcorn. As the episode unfolded, I watched with bated breath. The familiar score began, and with it, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. My heart swelled as my character emerged on screen, her story intertwining beautifully with the beloved narrative threads that had initially captivated us. It was as if our plans had harmonized with the creator's vision, creating something richer and deeper than any single contribution. I realized then that this moment wasn't about vindication, it was about reconciliation, not just with the creators, but with myself, my journey, and the stories I still carried within. And as I sat there, surrounded by laughter and joy streaming through every corner of my living room, it struck me that every ending leaves a space for new beginnings. The series had re-entered my life, not as a hollowed-out remnant of the past, but as a vibrant pulse that beat among us again. It was a gentle reminder that while stories may wane, their essence never truly fades. In our hands, they can always take flight once more. Update: in the weeks following the episode, an unexpected camaraderie blossomed between the fans, the showrunners, and even the actors who began to engage with us once more on social media. It felt invigorating to share in a collective appreciation, to dissect plot twists and character developments alongside those who once felt like strangers. The show had transformed into a collaborative creation, and, as someone who once felt on the outside, I finally felt at home. Together, we filled the void with renewed passion, with a promise that even when our favorite narratives twist unexpectedly, it's up to us to keep pouring our hearts into new stories, continuing the legacy of something we cherished. In the end, my biggest takeaway? That sometimes, the middle finger turns to a high five, and the stories we love are as much ours as they are the storytellers, ever evolving, ever bright. It was a crisp autumn evening when I found myself seated on a park bench, the sun dipping low and casting golden hues over the trees, lost in thought as I waited for my friend Sarah. We had grown up together, our lives entwined in a winding road of shared memories, laughter, and even occasional disagreements. One of those disagreements surfaced less than a week ago when Sarah casually mentioned she had rehomed her cat, Luna, because she was moving into a new apartment that didn't allow pets. I remember how my stomach churned at those words, the implications weighing heavy as I fought against the instinct to defend the word or home, a term that felt cold and clinical in this context. To me, it signified a relinquishment of responsibility, a decision that felt too easy for someone who had adored their pet just weeks before. When she arrived, enthusiasm radiated from her as she spoke about her new place, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I had to say something. "Did you really have to rehome her?" I asked, my voice teetering between concern and accusation. Sarah's smile faltered, her eyes flicked away, a flicker of guilt dancing on her features. "Well, I didn't have a choice," she replied defensively, her fingers tracing the fabric of her jacket. It felt like an innocent conversation spiraling into something deeper, an unspoken battle of values. As she continued detailing the space in her new apartment, excitement spilling from her like the leaves falling around us, I wrestled with the weight of my words. Was I being harsh? Was it fair to confront her at that moment, when all she wanted was to share her joy? I could see Luna's big, curious eyes, the way she would curl up in my lap when I visited Sarah, and it just felt wrong. "You could have found someone who could take care of her properly," I said, my voice steadier now, watching for Sarah's response. There was a long silence. Her expression closed off, and for the first time, I felt the distance between us. "You don't get it, do you?" she finally said, a hint of anger creeping into her tone. "I loved her, but I couldn't keep her. I had to think about my life. You know how it is when you're on your own." That was it. My heartbeat pulsed loud in my ears as I processed her admission, my mind rushing through memories of late-night snack raids indulging in comfort food, the unshakable bond that had once brought us close. I was the anchor, and she had seemed so adrift. I wanted the best for her, but at that moment, I felt like I had done the unthinkable. We were friends, yet I had challenged a decision that cut deeper than I realized. After that evening, our communications chilled. She began to post pictures of her new apartment, filled with stylish decor and vibrant colors, each post a reminder of how our lives were heading in different directions. I longed to reach out, to mend the bridge I had burned with my misplaced need to correct. A few weeks later, I decided to invite her over for coffee. As I poured and we settled into the familiar comfort of my living room, I took a leap. I'm sorry for how I reacted. It wasn't my place to judge your decisions. I was scared of losing our friendship, she sighed, her defenses lowering. I didn't mean to shut you out. It just hurt to hear it from you. There was a catharsis in admitting our faults, a moment where we synchronized our emotions, realizing the importance of honesty. As we talked it through, we both learned the value of understanding versus judgment. Maybe I wasn't the asshole, but just a friend trying to navigate a complex emotional landscape. I remember leaving the conversation feeling lighter, wrapped in a new layer of connection with Sarah, imperfect yet honest. In our journey to find common ground, we had stitched together a stronger bond, one that could withstand the challenges of life, including the heartbreak of saying goodbye to a pet. And as autumn slipped into winter, I reflected on how it was all right to feel deeply, to weigh decisions heavily, even when it caused ripples in our relationships. It's not about being right or wrong. Sometimes, it's simply about learning to listen. Update: a few months later, Sarah reached out, asking if I could join her for a fundraiser at the local animal shelter. Passion gleamed in her eyes as she spoke about the importance of responsible pet ownership and the struggles of animals in need. I think it's time I helped make a difference in some way, she said. In that moment, I knew Sarah had turned her experience into motivation, reshaping her heartache into advocacy. As we teamed up to raise awareness together, that initial tension, that moment of conflict, became a stepping stone into something greater, a testament to the resilience of friendship wrapped in understanding and growth. We started planning the fundraiser with a sense of purpose that I hadn't expected. As the days passed, I found myself leaning into this project with all the energy I had, eager to support Sarah in her newfound mission. The community pulled together in a way that was almost magical. Local businesses donated food, prizes, and even some services for the event. It was amazing to see people rally around something so meaningful. The shelter, a small yet bustling space filled with the soulful mews and barks of its inhabitants, became a second home to both Sarah and me. We spent hours making flyers, organizing online donations, and promoting the event on social media. With each post and share, I noticed Sarah's spirits rising significantly. She had transformed from a person who felt the heaviness of her previous decision into a beacon of light for others who were struggling with similar choices. The night before the fundraiser, we sat on the floor of my living room, strewn with papers, colorful decorations, and half-empty takeout containers. The air was alive with excitement, and I couldn't shake the feeling of how much this experience had brought us closer. As we laughed and shared stories about the cats we both cherished and the oddities we had come across at the shelter, I felt a sense of peace settle over us. The weight of that initial argument slowly faded, replaced by shared laughter and dreams of making a real difference. We had both learned from the experience. I was grateful for the way she had opened up about her choices, and she was hopeful about helping others avoid similar pitfalls. The day of the fundraiser dawned bright and sunny, a perfect backdrop for our event. People arrived with smiles, families brought their children, and a few furry friends bounced alongside them. I could see Sarah in her element as she mingled with the crowd, reading to the kids gathered around her, while I handled the donations and set up a photo booth for some adorable pet portraits. We had even arranged for a local animal trainer to give demonstrations. The allure of seeing cute animals working alongside humans drew in a larger crowd than we could have anticipated. I kept glancing at Sarah throughout, marveling at how far she'd come since that difficult conversation. Around mid-afternoon, as we watched people bidding on hours with the dog trainer, I noticed Sarah standing by herself a short distance away, a frown creasing her brow. I approached cautiously. "Hey, you good?" I asked, concerned. I had just seen her shine moments before. She looked up at me, her eyes a mixture of uncertainty and frustration. "I guess I never really thought about how much my choice affected others," she admitted quietly. "I mean, look at all these people. They're here to support a cause. Meanwhile, I felt like I'd let my cat down." Her voice trembled slightly, and I felt a surge of compassion wash over me. It was a moment of raw vulnerability, and I understood that her past choices still haunted her despite her efforts to turn things around. The crowd buzzed in the background, but the world felt still between us. "Sarah," I said softly, "what you did wasn't ideal, but it was part of your journey, and now you're using that to make a difference." I took a moment to gather my thoughts before continuing. "Every person here has made mistakes in one way or another. Your honesty about what happened with your cat has inspired others to take responsibility. You're helping people understand that rehoming doesn't equal giving up, it can be a tough decision with a new beginning waiting on the other side. Her expression shifted slightly as she absorbed my words. You really think so? She asked, a hint of hope flickering in her eyes. I nodded, reassuring her with a smile. I really do. And look around us. You're creating a community of awareness and compassion. That's bigger than just one bad decision. It was as if a dam inside her had broken, releasing the tension she'd held onto for so long, and she smiled, a genuine spark lighting up her features. As the day unfolded, I watched Sarah as she engaged with attendees, sharing stories, and embracing newfound friendships with those passionate about animal welfare. It filled me with warmth to witness her come alive in this atmosphere, where her past hadn't defined her, and her desire to advocate for animals took precedence. We did well that day beyond our expectations. We raised more funds than we could have hoped for and brought awareness to animal welfare like never before. As the sun began to set, and people started to gather their things, Sarah and I took a moment to reflect. We really did it, she sighed, exhaustion lining her voice, but joy danced in her eyes. I felt a wave of pride swell within me as I nodded, the remnants of our earlier disagreement wholly eclipsed by this sense of achievement and camaraderie. It would take time for Sarah to completely forgive herself, and while we both knew the road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, I was glad she had found purpose again. In the weeks following the event, we continued to volunteer at the shelter, slowly helping build a network of support and fostering hope in our community. I began to realize that even the most painful mistakes could pave the way for healing and understanding. They might be rough avenues, but they often lead us to where we are truly meant to be. With every adoption story we shared, every happy ending we witnessed, I felt grateful to be by Sarah's side, an unexpected partner in this journey towards redemption. Eventually, one evening after a long shift at the shelter, Sarah and I found ourselves just sitting in the quiet, the hum of the night wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. I think I'm finally at peace with what happened, she whispered, her voice calm and assured. And it's because of you. I smiled softly, feeling that once tense chapter of our friendship close like a book meeting its last page, knowing well that every ending sparks the light of a new beginning. The lessons embedded within lay the foundation for exploring our own journeys with newfound empathy and strength. As the stars flickered overhead, I marveled at how far we had come together. Gone were the days of tense discussions and misunderstandings, replaced by an unspoken bond forged in shared experiences and common goals. The shelter had become more than just a workplace, it was our sanctuary, a place where laughter spilled over the cages of cats and dogs alike, mingling with the sweet smell of pet food and the warm glow of the overhead lights. Evenings spent sorting donations turned into brainstorming sessions for future campaigns, and I could see the spark of determination in Sarah's eyes, illuminating her path forward. You know, I said after a gentle pause, if we keep this up, I think we'll make quite an impact. She chuckled softly, her laugh a melody that drove away the night's chill. The chilly breeze that wafted through the open window felt lovely, a reminder of the world outside, but inside, it felt like we had created our own safe haven, dedicated to ensuring others would find solace just as we had. One day, while wolfing down pizza in the break room, we started discussing the idea of an awareness poster for the fundraiser, describing responsible pet adoption in vivid detail. She suggested we feature personal stories from people who adopted pets from the shelter. I thought it was brilliant and couldn't help but share my own experience, how I had adopted my cat, Luna, who had been found roaming the streets, frightened and alone. The pure joy on her face as she listened reminded me how storytelling could bridge gaps, fostering connection and understanding amongst us. Every new idea swirled in the air like the sweet aroma of the pepperoni pie resting between us. The potential felt palpable. It dawned on me, as laughter echoed off the walls, that these projects were transforming both Sarah and me, aiding us in our journeys of growth, hers from overcoming loss, and mine from learning to advocate fiercely for those who couldn't speak for themselves. As the day of the fundraiser approached, an air of excitement hung around us, and so did the nervous anticipation. We prepared for an influx of community members at the shelter, hoping to raise funds and awareness. With the event looming closer, however, the reality of putting ourselves out there made my stomach flutter. What if I stumbled over my words? What if no one showed up? Every worry was a small cloud in the bright sky of possibility, and Sarah seemed to sense my anxiety, offering reassuring smiles and gentle pats on the back as we honed our message. We're just sharing our love for animals, she'd remind me, her strength palpable as she navigated her own hesitations. Her calm radiance became my anchor, and slowly, I realized that our paths intertwined not just in friendship but in the mission we shared. On the day of the fundraiser, the shelter vibrated with life and energy, various booths filled with animals looking for homes, volunteers bustling, and the intimate chatter of community filled the air. As people poured into the building, I felt a swell of pride. We had worked hard for this moment, igniting conversations about responsible pet care and the responsibilities that came with adopting. I was surprised when Sarah took her place behind the mic, addressing the crowd with vulnerability and strength. She spoke of the harsh realities within the world of animal welfare, but her voice trembled with passion and love, speaking about how significant it was to choose patience over impulse when it came to rehoming pets. It struck me then, witnessing the audience captivated by her story, that our paths were not merely parallel but actually woven together in a tapestry of understanding, compassion, and collective effort. Later that evening, as the last of the guests trickled out and the leftover pizza grew cold on the table, we took a moment to revel in our success, counting the donations and smiling at the progress we made. I used to feel so lost, you know? Sarah admitted, her brows furrowed slightly. But talking about my experience, sharing it with others, it's like a weight lifted. I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized that this journey had not only been about healing for her but also a restorative experience for me too. Having pushed my insecurities aside to advocate for animals had carved out a stronger version of myself, one unafraid to speak up for what mattered. Eventually, as we started to clean up, I could feel the warmth of possibilities ahead. Perhaps it was more than just a fundraiser, it had become a heartfelt rallying call for the community on behalf of those animals still waiting for their forever homes. Months later, Sarah and I would still reminisce about that day, but more importantly, we continued to press on, reaching toward other endeavors that would help better our connection to animals in need. As we expanded our projects, I often thought of that original conflict, a simple miscommunication that had evolved into something profoundly transformative. A reminder that with understanding and time, even the deepest wounds could become a wellspring of strength and new beginnings, each day unfolding a little more like a gentle unfurling of a leaf in spring. It wasn't until a chilly autumn day months later when Sarah called with a breathless excitement. "You need to come over. There's someone here who needs a friend." Curious and slightly amused, I hurried over, only to find her nursing another stray she had taken in, a timid kitten with soulful eyes peering up at me. In that moment, surrounded by warmth and laughter, I knew that although there would always be challenges ahead, Sarah and I had learned how to navigate our way through life's twists and turns, one heartfelt story at a time. And perhaps, from one rehomed cat to another, we had both discovered that every end could lead to a new beginning, forging deeper connections in the heart of it all.